Hey everybody, welcome back to ScreenRant. I'm Isaac, and this is my editor, Angus. Are you really gonna do that every time? We work at ScreenRant, but we're unfortunately demoted for writing a 2,000-word fan theory video about something called the Popeye Cinematic Universe. Now we've been assigned to the Comment Response Division. It sounds cool, but it's really not. Today we're looking at your answers to the question, what are your movie opinions that you are afraid to admit publicly? All right. And Indita says, well, that's actually super easy, barely an inconvenience. The first Starship Troopers movie is awesome. I don't think anyone should be ashamed to like Starship Troopers. It's the best sci-fi high school satire of fascism using giant bugs of all time. And I think that's saying something. It's a movie the AV Club said was too smart for its own audience, but not for you, Anindita. Haztech says, I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was an utter waste of time and was overly hyped with big names. You know what? Looking at the poster now, we agree. Yeah, Angus, could you just... Yeah, that's perfect. All right. Is this better? King Gordo says, Troy Bolton actually has a decent character arc throughout the High School Musical trilogy. Okay, so we just read the entire Troy Bolton page on the High School Musical wiki, which, by the way, was incredibly detailed, and we have concluded that his arc is the following. First, he wants to play basketball, then he wants to sing, and by the end of the third film, he's decided to do both, which, we can't argue, is decent, I guess. Also, we've learned some trivia on the wiki. Did you know Troy receives a hanging basketball wedgie from Chad in the first film and a summer ripping wedgie from Ryan in the second film? Every day I learn something new. Okay, just got a quick editor's note here. Angus wanted me to let y'all know he actually couldn't find a scene anywhere in the movies of Troy receiving a wedgie. So if anyone has any idea of what in the world this is referring to, just let us know. I mean, what is a summer ripping wedgie anyway? Odo says, I'ma say it now. The ending to Shrek 2 is quite possibly the best cinematic ending of all time. Yes, including Endgame's one. Move over Casablanca. Roll over Citizen Kane. Top 2 cinematic endings of all time. Number 1, Shrek 2. 2, Avengers Endgame. 3, end of list. There's no more. Dead Serious says, did not like There Will Be Blood, and it's mostly because of Daniel Day-Lewis's performance. We thought this was an obvious troll, but this guy is literally dead serious. Arigat says, I really like the Star Wars The Clone Wars animated film. We were with you until the last part of that sentence, Arigat. Unless you mean the war between Kevin Kline and the passage of time in the classic film The Big Chill, but I don't think that was animated. Good Luck Gopher says, part of me was rooting for Thanos the whole time. Well, he did look very peaceful on his farm at the end there, you know, with his crops and his little house near his crops. And his scarecrow? He had a scarecrow, right? I mean, half the time I was rooting for Thanos too, but luckily he vaporized that half. Okay, lots of Suicide Squad comments, and we can't say we fully agree. We have to acknowledge that considering the film was written in 6 weeks and recut by a trailer studio, it turned out pretty okay. Carson says, The Princess and the Frog. Yes, I'm a boy, so please don't laugh. I've actually never laughed at someone for being a boy, and I really don't plan on starting now. Reiner says, I'm a man, but I still think Little Women was the best movie of 2019. We loved Little Women, but we have to agree they would not win in a fight with the Joker, the Avengers, Ford, or Ferrari. I mean, there's only 4 of them, and Beth's illness is getting worse. Ledge says, Spider-Man Far From Home was a sort of okay Spider-Man movie. I really hate to admit it, but it just didn't really live up to my fullest expectations, and that's coming from a huge Spider-Man fan. That's probably the most honest I've ever been, and I feel kind of bad about it. That's pretty heavy. But you know what? It's good to open up your deepest feelings about a Spider-Man movie being just okay. Max says, I actually love the Amazing Spider-Man duology, especially the first one. Well, okay. We will say this about these movies. Paul Giamatti really went for it. The Ville says, I was glad when the iceberg appeared in Titanic. Well, I guess we don't have anything against the iceberg. They never really did anything to us. Vegeta says, I'm not afraid to say I don't like Star Wars, and I actually like musicals. Well, a wise young woman once said,
¿Por qué no las dos?
Freaky Guy says, I actually didn't mind Jar Jar Binks as a character. But all kidding aside, maybe send Ahmed Best, who played Jar Jar Binks, some love on Twitter. The guy got a lot of hate, even threats, for 2 decades, just for playing a movie character that people didn't like. Or, if you want, you could watch his new Star Wars game show. It actually looks really fun. MasterPug55 says, the second Twilight movie is actually really goose. We respect that. Personally, we think Hot Fuzz is a movie that's really goose.
But it's a swan.
Mark says, Surf's Up should be a stoner classic. Awesome soundtrack. I think Chicken Joe is way ahead of you, Mark. Mr. Fett says, I cried at the end of Toy Story 3. I'm 49. Then Marcus says to that, bruh, I cried. Not just tears, but all of it. I'm 31. Oh, quick question for Marcus. What does all of it mean? And what's the next step after tears? You know what? Actually, don't answer that one. Real J says, I love Dynamite from Scoob Movie because he's attractive. All right. I think we can just move on from this one. Jack says, Pirates of the Caribbean is a very underrated film collection. We agree, but not as underrated as my collection of stamps, my bottle cap collection, or Angus's collection of toast that looks like Jeremy Renner. Also, on a more serious note, I may or may not have shed a tear at the end of the Pirates of the Caribbean 5 movie when Elizabeth and Jack reunite. And yes, it may have been my 20th birthday. Just let me know in the comments below if I'm not the only one. Maybe we could start a Pirates of the Caribbean 5 support group. Kim says, I always laugh when they shoot Old Yella. Just have a question for you. How often do you watch Old Yella? And when you do, is it just for the single laugh at the end? Also, I think you and the Iceberg guy should hang out. CJ says, I'm a fan of the DreamWorks Madagascar films, and Glory the Hippo is my favorite character. Whoa, CJ, that's a pretty dangerous movie confession. Don't worry, if anyone asks us, your favorite character is a Melman.
I can see where this is going.
Andrew says, I enjoyed Norbit and still laugh about it to this day. Weirdly, you actually have that in common with Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys, who gave this interview. When asked the question, what's your favorite movie? He just says Norbit. Doug says Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift was by far the best one of the franchise. Tokyo Drift is easily the best standalone Fast movie. It crystallizes the series' themes of found family and a story of a troublemaker who, after finding people who care about him, learns to take responsibility for his actions. Plus, it introduced us to Han, the coolest racer to ever drift through a Fast movie. Nice one, Doug. We love this movie, even if the guy playing a teenager looks like he's in his early 30s. Zeno says, I actually love Son of the Mask. Not as much as Jim Carrey's The Mask, but the sequel is a guilty pleasure for me. We totally get it. Who couldn't love a face like this? Baby Yoda says, I like Star Wars prequels more than the original trilogy. I think that Terminator Dark Fate is a good film and I like Cars 2. Or at least that's how I imagine he would sound. That's a confession and a half. Save some for next week's confession. And for that Cars 2 one, I think you need to repent.
Oh, you've got to be joking.
This guy says, I was disappointed that the final twist in M. Night Shyamalan's Split was David Dunn and not Jean-Claude Van Damme doing his epic splits. You know what, I've never thought about that, but now that I'm thinking about it, it does seem like that should have been the twist. Everything Sucks says, I really like the Lego Batman movie. It's an underrated gem. Well, maybe you should change your account name to reflect your true feelings then. Angus, can you just... Thank you. Yeah. Perfect. Rue says, Speed Racer was a movie ahead of its time. Speed Racer was a movie that was dismissed on its original release as being silly and childish. It's a movie full of weird visuals and corny jokes and melodramatic plot twists. But when you look beyond the surface, it becomes very clear that Speed Racer is a very intelligent film. It's a movie about the creative process, about trying to make art while working for corporations that don't really care about you. When Speed runs his final race, he sees his entire life flash before his eyes. Because when you make something great, all of you goes into it. So maybe we shouldn't be so embarrassed about the things we like, even if they are perceived as uncool. If you see something in it, there's probably something worth seeing. So, to everyone who answered, even if we disagree with you, maybe you're not wrong, like Speed Racer. Maybe you're just ahead of your time. Alright, that's it for us. If you like this video, please leave a comment. It's literally our job to read them. Don't forget to subscribe to ScreenRant for more High School Musical wedgie trivia. Alright, Angus, play us out.